Right, good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to this communications coaching webinar. It's absolutely great to be with you on a Friday afternoon, as we always spend some time together and just go through some great topics, very important for your studies and getting ready for the workplace. As you're coming online, just confirm that you can hear me and loud and clear and see the slides and all the great content that we're going to be getting into this afternoon. And as always, please just do let us know which university that you are at and where you're coming from today. Hopefully we've got quite a wide representation. I know this has been a very high demand topic, that people have asked me for, and that we've been able to put some content together, and we'll take you through that this afternoon. So good afternoon to you all. Please just do say how's it in the chat, and make sure that everything's working well and you can see the screens, and we'll get going as soon as possible. So I don't have a guest with me today. It's myself flying solo. So Calvin, how's it? Good afternoon. You and I spent some time this week going through a couple of webinars on how to boost your job prospects and then how to accelerate your career growth once you're up and running in the career of your choice. So hopefully that was useful for everybody. And certainly today, I think is going to build on that with the sort of communication skills that we're going to go through, and that I'll take you through just now a bunch of principles, and then some actual areas of communication within which you need to be thinking about, so that you can improve the way that you can communicate and just maximize your impact, which is really so important. Because no matter what you're doing, whether you're studying, whether you're in the workplace, in your family life and school, with the kids, etc., everything you do relies on good communication. So I'm just going to take you through what I've learned in my 25 years of communicating in the workplace, and obviously in many other areas of my life as well. And hopefully that'll be something that you can learn from. I'm not going to make you an offer at the end. I can put the whole course on discounts, and I've got my ebook available for free. So we'll do that a little bit towards the end of the session. But a very good afternoon, Puti and Matapelo and Ayanda, Gerline. Great to have you guys on board. Good to have you in the session. Really appreciate the support, and hopefully you guys are going to get lots of value from the session today. But please do pop a specific question in the chat. It's always very important just to deal with the specific questions that you guys have. Anything with regards to communication that you've got on your minds today, specifically communication in the workplace, possibly communication in your syndicate studies. How's it Neo from Northwest University? Neo, in Northwest University, how's the communications going up there? What are the big issues that we face with regards to communications, getting a message out, making sure that people can understand you clearly, and that you can get your message across, and that you can have the impact that you need to be successful? You absolutely have to get your message across, whether you're studying and presenting your results, or engaging in the workplace and updating stakeholders and committees on your progress and your work. If you're not communicating effectively, you're not getting a message across, and people aren't going to be able to see the value of what you have to offer. So really would advise you just to spend some time thinking about your own communication styles, and make sure that you get those right. So right off the bat, Calvin's got a interesting one there. Footers for emails. Never feel I get them right. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So we've got a section on emails. It's the first one that we'll get through just now. And I've sort of changed over the years. I used to put my name and my title and my cell phone number and my email address and all the rest of it. And I've actually dropped that in favor of just a very simple thanks, Peter, because people can get all the information that they need in order to get hold of you. The focus that we'll go into just now, as we actually kick off this webinar on the topic of emails, is very much more the body of the email, and how are you going to come across effectively in that email, so that the person can get the value from the content of what you're saying. They're probably less worried about who it's coming from. If it gives them value, then they can engage with you further from there. All right, so Calvin, that's my approach on footers. I've, after 25 years, opted just for thanks, Peter. That's very simple, that has served me well, and people know how to get a hold of me if they, I don't need to put all my information in the bottom there. And I'll teach you why in a minute. People probably often don't even see your footer. And I'll explain to you just now why you've probably got a very limited window across, through which you're going to be able to get your information in your email into people's inboxes. So that's quite important to make sure that you take that into account and that you are aware of that as you are, using emails to communicate. And the reality is, emails is still a massive means of communication and something that you absolutely have to get right. Alrighty, so let's get started, and really looking forward to everybody's contribution today, and questions that you're going to ask, and challenges that you can send my way, and action hopefully that you're going to take afterwards. Bashle, Bogise, good day. Hey everyone, great to have your support this afternoon. We've got a great turnout, so it's absolutely fantastic. We had such a good session last week. I don't know, did anybody apply for that Converse funding? We were talking about Converse dishing out funding last week. They made available, I think, 2 million rand to help student funding. And I'd really like to know if anybody actually did go and apply on the website to get some access to that funding. I heard a few people that had applied, and we actually interviewed last week the head of marketing at Converse. And he said to us that they had 61,000 applications. So Calvin, you applied, that's fantastic. Look, I said to you guys, just apply everywhere, look for all the opportunities you can to get scholarships and support, so that you can just ease that financial burden. Even if it's 1,000, 2,000, whatever the case, it's always going to alleviate pressure somewhere else in your life, and mean that you can, spend a bit of money maybe on yourself. You must look after yourself and make sure that you are getting the time to relax and to celebrate the great work that you're doing as part of your studies. Okay. All right. So guys, keep the questions coming. Still interested to see if we had anybody applying on Converse. We've had one so far. That's great. And then just before we start, had an interesting point. Okay, Bawanile, fantastic. Also applied. And I'm also just interested, guys, did you apply because you joined the webinar and we marketed this in the community, or were you aware of this already and that was something that, maybe you came to the session, you just found out a little bit more information about? Or so I'm just keen to understand if you applied, through the webinar and because of what you saw in the community. It just always helps me, understand whether we're adding value and helping you guys with, additional opportunities to be successful and alleviate challenges that you might have, for example, with finances, etc. Okay, and there's my website, guys. You can always go and get more information about everything that I offer in the website, the podcast, the blogs, the courses, everything else. So let's get into some principles of communicating. And the first one I would say is storytelling is important. Storytelling is a technique that you will find if you look for it in movies, in marketing, in clever promotions, in books, even textbooks, and very, advanced communications methods often rely on fairly simple, basic storytelling principles. If you look at Hollywood movies, it always relies on the story of the hero's quest, where somebody is called up to take on a mission, and then they go through some kind of conflict, and then there's both a transformation that they achieve. Maybe they save the world or they save somebody else, but then there's that personal transformation that they go through. And there's some variations of that, but that simple storyline of the hero's quest is probably the kind of core template or pattern, if you like, certainly for so many superhero movies and other Hollywood movies, that you'll have, if you go back and you think about it, it's all just variations on that. It's a different character, it's a different setting, it's a different mission that they have to go on, etc. But storytelling comes through in so many things that we experience in our lives. And if you go and unpack it and take it back to that storytelling principle, you can use that and apply that in your own communications techniques. And we'll talk about the different areas of communications today, but I would look to storytelling to improve any kind of communications that you go through. You can tell a story in any conversation that you have, almost any email or presentation that you give, and when you tell a story, it makes it real for the person, because you can put them into the story. They can relate to the character that you're telling the story about. I even used a storyline technique in my own PhD thesis. So I had a kind of theoretical framework that I was presenting, And then after the main results section, I actually told the story using those results. And if you followed me for a while, you know I did my PhD on agile software engineering. So I told the story of a typical agile software engineering team and how, you know, they went through a whole bunch of conditions and experienced a whole bunch of things within which I could then, you know, let my theory come through. And it was far more practical and interesting and insightful, I think, for somebody to read. Obviously, I had to have the sort of theoretical, more academic treatment of my framework, but my external examiner remarked on my use of storytelling in my PhD as really sort of bringing it to life and I think making it real for them. So storytelling, one key principle. Second key principle is, you know, I think any kind of communications, and you're going to have a range of channels in which you communicate, and a range of audiences, and a range of different reasons that you communicate, and also a wide variety in terms of how much you'll be able to prepare for some type of communication versus how much it'll be instinctive or just straight off the bat. And certainly when you are doing a little bit more prepared type of communication, and maybe it's a product launch or it's an event that you're running at work, or maybe it's something at varsity. If I think about, for example, Calvin, you know, we had the sessions this week that Calvin, you know, put together and that I co-hosted with him. And, you know, I think we started with some ideas and we threw those ideas around, but we very quickly got to that point where we decluttered the messages. We were very clear and precise around what we wanted to communicate in those two webinars. We had two very successful this week, and we've got two more coming up on the 29th and 31st, looking at digital disruption and digital transformation. So, you know, communication can start out, you know, very wide and, you know, in terms of getting lots of ideas and brainstorming on the table, but then you very quickly need to, you know, converge and make sure that you've, you know, simplified that message right down. Hopefully you bring storytelling into it, you know, declutter messages, take unnecessary words out. You can go and do my training courses. I teach you how to structure sentences that are simple and keep the reader in mind, for example. But whether it's an email, whether it's a poster in your workplace canteen, you know, whether it's a presentation or a speech that you're giving, always try and resolve it down to what's the bare basics in terms of the words and the messages that you need to get across. And that links to the second one. It's difficult to be clear and precise if you've just got too much that you're trying to communicate. And we'll look at emails just now, but that's one of the single biggest things that I see wrong with people's emails, is they just try and put too much in the actual email. And if you need to communicate, you know, more information than what you can put in an email, you know, then it should go into a memo or a presentation of sorts, and then you attach that and you know, highlight exactly what people are going to get when they look at the attachment and why they need to look at it, for example. So those are a couple of principles. Go into a little bit more detail in that lesson in the course, which I will give a link to later on in the session. But that really, I think, frames, you know, just a couple of ideas that you want to keep in mind as you go into, you know, learning about communications. All right, so then let's get into emails. Now, emails is a big one, and I think surprisingly is still a very, you know, popular and overused form of communication. And there's no doubt that we've all probably got multiple emails, email addresses, and you probably got an email address at your university. You probably got a, you know, personal email address. You may have a couple of others. You know, maybe in your family you've got a couple. Maybe you've got a business on the side, and you've got a business email address as well. So we all just have too many emails, and we all just use emails for too much communication. So what I've listed there, and what I go into a little bit more detail in the course, is you know, some ideas that I picked up over the years just to make yourself better at managing emails and communicating through emails. And the first idea really is that your inbox is very much a part of email communication, as much as the individual email as well. So, you know, when you think about your inbox, you probably have a sense of dread around, you know, getting through your emails and trying to see if you can, you know, answer a few and fire them off, etc. Now, the reality is that processing your inbox like that is actually an administrative task, because you're working through a task list. Your inbox is a task list. You know, that email has arrived in your inbox and it almost sits there demanding your attention. Now, the fact that somebody can get their attention into your inbox, you've obviously, been in some kind of discussion or relationship with them, and you're expecting some information from them, and you now have this pressure of needing to work through your inbox, even just for the sake of the peace of mind that you get from not having to get through too many emails. So how many of you guys are struggling with inboxes these days? And what I would suggest you do is never process your inbox before lunchtime. You're really squandering, your best thinking and problem-solving time of the day. Process your inbox later on in the day, and leave the morning and the better part of the day in terms of your thinking and problem-solving skills for, crafting a couple of emails, responding to a couple of important emails. By all means, scan your inbox for important topics, urgent things, messages from your boss potentially, or emails that you had sent and now that you were expecting an urgent reply from. But avoid the temptation to then start ticking off mails and firing off answers and forwarding things and replying back to people, etc., especially when it's a low cognitive response that's required from you. You can do that in the afternoon. And if you then change your relationship with your inbox, I think you change your relationship with, and you change your mindset around actually writing more powerful emails. Mintlo, welcome from Northwest University. Joey, good to see you. As we all know, we've got these lunch and learn webinars every Friday afternoon, so it's good that we can just learn something in our lunchtime, and it's great to have this format with you guys. So we're talking emails at the moment, and Calvin asked a great question just as we were teeing up the webinar about footers. And what I would suggest, just in that third bullet point that I've mentioned there, is if you can, get your message across in 2 or 3 sentences, that's going to help you, because, when people read an email and they look at their inbox, and remember again, people don't actually read emails, they read inboxes, they process inboxes. Your email is going to probably come up in that preview pane. And certainly in a corporate workplace environment, and I think probably a lot of the other email applications, etc., there's a preview format, which gives you a limited window to a part of your email. Now, you can't then rely on stuff that's way down the bottom of your email to get your message across, because the chances are people will respond to your email based on what they can see in the preview. So that's why I suggest the 3-sentence rule. Obviously, greet the person up front, but then in 2 sentences, get your message across. And then you can have a short bullet list with a closing sentence, and then your footer. And this was the discussion that we were having with Galvin just now. If you put your phone number and your email address and a logo and a whole lot of stuff underneath that, there's a chance that people aren't even going to see it anyway. So apart from the fact that, people will know how to get hold of you, over the years, I've had long footers, I've dropped them, and I just have a thanks, Peter, at the end. And the focus really for me is in, crafting and constructing that email, using that 3-sentence rule. And your bullet points, can be different things. If you're managing a project, for example, or you're running a syndicate, or you need the people on the email to do something, those bullet points can be then a call to action. And we can go through that just now, but all those bullet points could be a list of key things that people need to be aware of. Point there about attachments is I see far too many emails where people just send an attachment and they say, please see attached. Well, I don't know what you want me to do with attached. I don't know why I need to see the attached. It might ring a bell based on a meeting or discussion that we'd had, but if you're writing good, well thought through emails, you need to be saying, please see attached, specifically page 3 and 4, and I'd like you to kind of give a response on this point here and note the following paragraphs, and perhaps you can update page number 10, for example, in preparation for the meeting next Thursday, for example. So bring the context of the attachment into the email with a clear call to action for what you need a person or other people on the email to do, and you'll be delivering value through your emails, and people are much more likely to actually read your emails versus a mail that says, please see attached. Again, back to that point, that's going to get processed. That's going to get processed into a folder of read later or action or work on tomorrow, for example. The degree to which you put some thought into your emails, the degree to which a person reading your email is going to put some thought into a response. So those are a couple of thoughts there about emails. And I think just it's worth taking the time to, earn some credibility for crafting, well thought through emails, and you could potentially use some things there that I've mentioned. And of course, there's lots more insights in the course. The question about the bursary and the link, I think if you were referring to the discussion that we were having just now about the Converse student funding, that's unfortunately closed. That closed on the 14th of March. It's called Kick the Debt, and you can probably go and see some information on the Converse website, converse.co.za. But what I would say is that if you hop onto my YouTube channel, we have got quite a number of different videos where I actually take you through a number of scholarships and bursaries websites that are available. For example, I posted a video last night about the Google Africa PhD scholarship, which is now open. And it's mainly for students in the AI and the machine learning environment. So if you're doing, studies in artificial intelligence, machine learning, for example, you could apply for the PhD Google scholarship. I think you have to be in your first year, full-time master's or PhD student, and they'll, I think, give you a scholarship to the value of $30,000. Not sure if that includes tuition fees, but in the video on the YouTube channel, I go through all the details so that you can potentially go and apply there. And there's another video where we go and look at a website called ZA Bursaries, and on there is listed all the bursaries available to South African students according to whichever degree you might want to study. So if Roma, go hop on the YouTube channel while you're there, checking out the videos. Please also subscribe, and everybody else also, if you are not subscribed yet, please do subscribe so that you can go and get the value from the videos that I post there, which is both coaching as well as insights about bursaries and scholarships and how you could alleviate any student funding issues that you might have, for example. Right, let's move on to then online meetings, and I guess this is something that's become a reality for all of us. As we've gone into the pandemic and lockdowns over the last year. So I've got that website right here, actually. So just the point that I made now about the bursaries, zabursaries.co.za. So you can hop onto that website and go pick that up and have a look there. And there's lots and lots and lots of bursaries. The video that I actually on the YouTube channel, I go through a couple of, I look at engineering, for example, that's what I was interested in, and I myself had a bursary from Eskom. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to say. So I've been through the whole bursary process, and on other webinars, I sort of coach you on how to approach applying for bursaries, and a lot of what we teach in terms of applying for a job. You can also apply cover letters, CVs, getting your documentation ready, being organized, having a spreadsheet if you're applying to multiple different companies or bursaries, etc. All of that very important to help you be successful at getting bursaries. Okay. So now online meetings, we've all, I think, are aware of the Zoom zombie or other sort of issues that have gone on with online meetings, and kids running in the background, and, microphone and cameras not working, and, you're on mute. All these, I think, has been the light-hearted aspects of us all moving on to these online meeting platforms in 2020, as we all still needed to study. We all still needed to work and interact and engage and obviously have online meetings to keep the economy going, to keep our degrees going, to keep driving value, in our workplace. And in the course, and I go through, and each of the topics that I'm sort of coaching you on now, there's a full section in the course. There's a one-on-one lesson, there's a whiteboard lesson, there's activities, and there's a worksheet that you can then download and take away. We're just touching on the key topics in the session today. But for online meetings, I give a couple of thoughts there. Firstly, guys, you've got the feature now. Cameras are all pretty good. If you need to sort your background out, do that, or get a virtual background. But I generally, my default is to put my camera on, and so people can see me. And certainly that should, I think, be something that you want to do in the introduction of your session, when everybody's sort of coming online, and then you might want to switch your camera off while there's more sort of a general discussion. And I also so I just saw a question there about getting access to the podcast. So the link is in the chat, so you don't have to write down that long HTTP address. You can click the link there and hop onto the podcast. and lots of inspiring stories that we release every Wednesday morning. And many of you on this webinar today and in the community are actually already part of that podcast and subscribe, and I have already interviewed. So please do go and subscribe there, leave a rating and a review for the podcast channel. That'll really be very helpful. And tell me if you want to hear anything specific. We are interviewing, I think, the Vice Chancellor of WITS at some point this year. We've interviewed the President of the Convocation of WITS. We've interviewed PhD students, master students, part-time students, and all with this common theme of telling a story. So just to the principle earlier of telling stories in communications, a podcast and the way that we run the Student Success Coach podcast is all about telling the stories of successful students. So you can listen to the podcast you can listen to it on Spotify, on Google, Stitcher, I think, iTunes and others. The most popular one is Spotify, but obviously Google and others. And then in the Facebook group, you can get the links to all of those as well. But podcast for me is a classic example of that storytelling principle at work, because I really get the people that I interview to unpack their story of student success. And then, when you hear that story, you listen in much more, you relate much more deeply, etc. And I've seen the power of telling stories, through the podcast channel. Okay. All right. So online meetings, as I said, try and get your camera on, certainly when you introduce yourself up front. If you're doing a presentation, and I have a whole public speaking and presentations course, but when we were in person and we were actually presenting to people in a room, obviously people could see us. We didn't hide behind a curtain or a door or a wall. We were in the room. We put ourselves out there and we put our slides up on the screen. And I firmly believe that you will earn a lot of credibility if you follow that practice to keep your camera on when you're doing presentations. But then, as I said, maybe during the normal course of the discussion in the meeting, you take your camera off. And then you obviously just need to listen, because you don't want to be on display all the time. If I'm doing a coaching webinar like this, I know for an hour I'm presenting, my camera's on, you can see my hand gestures, we've got a bit of a degree of eye contact, and it would make for a very boring webinar if you were just listening to my voice and looking at the slides. So you can see me, I'm here, I'm engaging with you, and the degree to which you can build it and as a practice for your online meetings, I think you'll become a better communicator. Now, of course, chat, you've got that feature in Teams, in Zoom, obviously here, and I think any sort of online interaction platform, is going to have an element of chat. And there's a couple of thoughts there. Use it with context and intent. Too often I see people saying, I agree or I disagree. Now, you're not going to have the context of what that person is agreeing or disagreeing with. When you use the chat, rather say, I agree with Janet, we need to focus on our sales to this target market in the fourth quarter of 2021, for example. Or I agree with Michael about the design of that system for that project. Obviously, you can't put all the information in there, but think about context and think about when somebody else reads that comment that you put in the chat and how they might be able to link that back to the presentation or the discussion. Okay, and then, make a contribution into the meeting meaningfully and with purpose. Be engaged. Calvin's asked a great question now about slide design. And in my PowerPoint presentations course, I actually go through a couple of examples of very bad slides. And there are some techniques around slide design. And hopefully I follow my own practices, and the slides that you see from me hopefully are good quality, and it must be, visually impactful. A couple of things, you don't want to put pictures, behind text. You don't want to have too many different colors. If you're working for a company, there's probably going to be a palette of colors, a color scheme, if you like, or a standard template that you will be required to use, which has the company's logo on it, for example. And the slide templates will come with specific layouts that you can use for different slides, just to make sure that you get that good practice in your slide designs and in your presentations. So to answer Calvin's question, I think the maximum number of elements, typically you're aiming for about maximum or minimum 14-point font, on your text. And, I certainly wouldn't. So that, for example, the slide I've got there now, nice bold heading, a visually interesting image on the side, and then, no more than 5 or 6 bullets, with no more than sort of 4 or 5 words for each bullet. And if you have to communicate more information, you either need to break it into further slides or do a memo. Now, one of the things I teach in my PowerPoint presentations course is that a company like Amazon has actually banned PowerPoint, because PowerPoint is very badly overused for exactly this reason. And, the corporate online meeting of hundreds and hundreds of slides, something that, people dread having to get through on a daily basis. And at Amazon, what they do is they write a 6-page memo, and then they discuss that memo at the beginning of the meeting. And there might be some visual content in that memo, but the memo really sets out, again, the story of what you're telling, and you have to then actually take some time to write that story so that other people can properly consume it and go through it as part of that memo. So those are all some interesting aspects around online meetings there. And then, of course, what I also teach in that course, and what I give you some insights to in this specific course that I'll offer to you guys just now, is how to monitor the chat and the questions while you're presenting. And it's a very simple technique, and how you actually just change the settings of your slideshow so that you can put your presentation in one corner of the screen, and then you can also see the chat and the questions of your Teams or Zoom window on the side. Because too many times I hear people in meetings saying, I can't see the chat, I can't see the questions. The other technique is just to have your another device connected into the meeting, and then you can actually see the questions are there, or you can monitor your presentation on that second device. And then another thing that I hear a lot of people saying in the workplace, is can you see my slides? Can you hear me? And I think it's good just to check those things, but don't get into the habit of it. The technology works, and people will let you know if they can't hear you, they can't see your slides or your content. Okay, then groups. So this is obviously a very, pervasive aspect of our lives. And I think digital communication, certainly in groups, and WhatsApp revolutionized messaging. It converted it from the sort of one-on-one SMS interaction of 140 characters, and it socialized it with group messaging, and sort of became, I guess, an over-the-top application that obviously now disintermediated the telecommunications providers, because people have much more of a stronger relationship with their WhatsApp groups and messages and any other messaging platforms than they do the original, provider of the connectivity. And it was the providers of connectivity, like your telecommunications industries, that cottoned on to this idea of short messages in the form of SMSs, because SMSs actually didn't, cost any more to send over the network, and it became very convenient. WhatsApp then said, well, let's socialize that, let's make it more interesting, and let's, enable people to interact in groups, which is simply saying, well, let multiple people see the messages that are happening at the same time, rather than the sort of exclusive one-on-one format of SMSs. However, like any convenient form of communication, it does have its dangers. And, we're all on class WhatsApp groups and project syndicate WhatsApp groups, and loads of these things, and you're probably battling a barrage of communication every day. And I think if everybody was to communicate well and with the right intention and with the right practices, it just improves everyone's quality of communication. So when it comes to groups, I mean, the one suggestion I would have is to only post, into a group what's useful for everyone. And some of you might be on the WITS postgrad academic group that I've been moderating probably now for about 4 or 5 years, where we had sort of a rapid growth in postgrad students at WITS, wanting to join the group where they could then ask questions and they could interact and quickly get answers to something, rather than going and wading through the website or, following some sort of process to have some information. And we went through kind of a learning process in that group. I'd love to hear if anybody, in the webinar today is in the WITS postgrad group, and please give some comments as to how well you think or not I was moderating that group. But what we ended up with was we split off a group for social, because we realized that because we brought everybody together on that format, people naturally wanted to socialize and interact, and yet there were other people that were really only there for the academic benefits of it. So what we actually did was we we had one or two issues and challenges. We got through those, and then as a team, and the kind of people that were very vocal on the group, and this was at a full capacity group. And I mean, I had people asking to get on the group, and we just didn't have space. We actually then split off into a social group, which I then said was not directly associated with WITS. And then we kept the formal WITS postgrad academic WhatsApp group in place, and I then enforced fairly strict principles. Now, in a WhatsApp group, there's a description field when you go in and maintain the group, and what we do is we put the principles of the group into that description so that people, when they come in, they can quickly see the principles and the type of content that we allow and that we encourage, obviously, on the group. And on the very rare occasion when people go outside those rules, they quickly apologize, or the group just kind of highlights the fact that they haven't been respecting the group rules. So that's just one tip there. And then digital citizenship, very important. Remember the principles of authenticity and humility and mutual respect, etc. all apply, both equally in the physical world and in the digital world. I think, WhatsApp groups and group messaging has just made it quicker for us to make the same mistakes that, we often still make in the physical world. But just remember that, there's always still going to be a human on the other end. And we'll talk about verbal communication just now, but, that sort of limited character format that you get, even though you need to give context and you need to post something that's useful for everyone, can still be taken out of context and still can be misinterpreted. So there's a lot there to think about when using group messaging to be an effective communicator. Having said that, still very powerful, still very useful. And of course, with WhatsApp, you've also got admin-only groups, you've got broadcast lists, and I'm sure that on other platforms, there are other features that you can explore to make you a better group communicator on those types of platforms. Okay. Right, then social media, I think, is just an important part of all of our communication. I mean, we're on social media today. YouTube is a form of social media, and in the course, I go through, just my own perspective on some principles that you can apply for using social media, and ultimately, you need to use it according to the other users on that platform and their expectations of what they want to consume and how they want to interact on that platform. So between an Instagram and a YouTube and a Pinterest and a Facebook and others, they're all slightly different in terms of, the format of the content. Twitter is very much more text-based, newsworthy, current affairs, commenting on political aspects, etc. Whereas Instagram is obviously very much more, the photographic effects and the arts and crafts and interior design and sort of modeling and fashion sort of type of content. And then Facebook, obviously the original social media platform, a lot more intimate, a lot more of a mixture of those, and a lot more the commenting and the likes and the families and the social interaction, etc. So I think what's very important just to take away from this, and I know a lot of people switch off their social media accounts just to reduce the amount of noise in their life. And that's you absolutely need to do that. And I certainly don't try and be available on all platforms. I have one or two through which I maintain the community of the student success coach, and on which I have my other personal individual channels. But you can't just blanketly use each one in the same way. That will come across as a little bit jarring for other people using those platforms. And if you're driving a social media campaign for a brand that you maybe work for, or in your own capacity as a side hustle, for example, a bad practice is just, repurposing content across multiple platforms without acknowledging the different expectations of people that are on those platforms and the slightly different formats of, how you should repurpose content and put it out on those different forums there. And then again, I think we'll talk just now about the sort of broadcast type of communications and getting people to do things, but it's actually quite hard to get people to do things on social media. People are on social media to consume rather than necessarily to take action. But if you combine multiple different channels and different formats, and you understand how people want to take action and are committed to doing something and need your high quality communication just to help them to take action and to attend something or to get some value from something, then you can combine all these different formats quite powerfully. And then large audiences, and again, I've been in my 25 years, I've experienced a wide range of what would be sort of mass marketing or mass audience communications, whether it's for events or product launches or conferences or town halls. And, I can clearly remember some of the higher quality types of communication that, I experienced, and I can remember some of the ones that just had not had much thought go into it. And whatever it is that you're trying to organize or arrange, there's a couple of principles. The first one is at the bottom there, diversify the channels in the communication. So, just putting a poster up in your canteen, the people that don't go and eat lunch there, they're not going to get your message. You need to follow that up, or, in parallel, send an email, add something on the group messaging. But again, use each of those different channels in the way that people tend to consume communication on those channels. So while you might put some more detail in an email, you're not going to put all that email on the poster in the canteen. So you kind of really need to have a bit of a strategy. And in the course, I kind of put this all out on a whiteboard for you. And I say, look, if you're trying to get to some outcome, some sort of action or some sort of event, you need to put a plan in place as the event organizer or the person driving that communication that understands the different channels on which people are going to consume your communication. Diversify the different channels on which you're going to communicate that information. And then as you lead up to the event or the time when you need people to take action, you then increase the frequency of those messages closer to when that action is required. And people will be grateful for that. I mean, I just, quickly message people to say, we're starting in 20 minutes. And an unbelievable amount of people say, thanks for the reminder, appreciate that, I'll see you there. And otherwise they might have missed it. So hopefully I follow good practices communication in running this community and bringing value to you guys with these webinars and all the content that I do provide to you. And then I think just the top bullet point there is, always craft messaging that emphasizes relevance. And there again, you can bring in storytelling, because if you're telling stories and you're putting the recipient of your communication into that story, they are going to relate a lot better to the message that you're trying to give them. And then, as we sort of start to wrap up, just the key areas of communication and what you could learn from going through the course in a bit more detail. Verbal, I think, is an opportunity for you to convey confidence through adequate preparation. And I prepare, for these webinars, I prepare for any engagements that I have. I prepared well for the webinars that we had with Tuckies during the week that Calvin organized, for example. And if you're having a verbal interaction with your boss, certainly in a workplace context, that confidence is going to come through in your preparation. The quality of your verbal communication will be directly impacted by the degree to which you are organized. And I teach organizational skills with Kanban. I teach time management skills, for example, all with the intention of helping you be successful, get through your studies, have the right level of impact and success that you want in the workplace. And verbal communication and verbal interaction is going to be a part of all of those environments. So whether it's in an online setting and you need to support verbal communications with visible on-camera hand gestures like I am at the moment, and I also teach you how to make sure that you set yourself up in the frame. So your eye level, must be at about a third of the way down from the top of the frame, and then you've got another 2/3, and then your head in the middle third of the video frame, exactly like I've got mine set up at the moment. Once you've got those things right and you approach online meetings, then your verbal communication is going to come through a lot more effectively. I also teach, for example, how to use headsets and microphones to improve the quality of, when you speak through into an online meeting, so that the verbal interaction that you have with somebody, even though it is digitally transmitted, has the best chance of being heard in the best possible way by the other person. And of course, when social distancing, etc., is relaxed, and we've all hopefully been vaccinated, and we can spend a lot more time in a lot more intimate verbal conversations that we all, I think, obviously need and rely on a lot. These principles still absolutely apply. And I think, having gotten used to wearing masks, which actually obscures our mouth, I have to sort of remember to speak up a little bit more, because that mask, when you are talking to somebody and you need to be a couple of meters away from them, plus the mask, you need to speak up a little bit, you need to project your voice a little bit more. And hopefully eventually when we get to being able to take our masks off, for example, and we can read the lips and the facial expressions of people. It all complements, the experience of that verbal communication. So those are all some of the issues that we're facing, that we're all dealing with, and that we're all, needing to get to grips with. And I think Stephen Covey, taught this principle in How to Win Friends and Influence People. And we were talking about this book actually in the webinar during the week. But you must listen in order to understand, not to reply. And so often when we're listening, in a verbal interaction, we're just crafting our reply, and we're waiting for that person to finish so that we can say what we want to say. And you must genuinely listen to understand. And a technique that I've applied very effectively, and it may slow the conversation down, and that's something that you must just make peace with, and you may not then have a chance to make your contribution. But after somebody said something, just reply back by saying, I just want to make sure I've understood what you're saying. So just to reword what your message is, let me just recap and just almost play back to that person what it is that you've heard them say, so that they can confirm that it is, after which you can then give your response. Because again, if you've misheard them, and with masks and online meetings and microphones that don't work, there's a higher chance of that misunderstanding happening. So you must listen and confirm your understanding verbally with the person, so that your ultimate reply and response and contribution to that conversation is going to be of a higher quality. And these are things that, even though Stephen Covey wrote that book a good 20 years, I think in the digital age, when we're communicating in a pandemic with masks on our faces over online meetings, is probably, still more important than it's ever been. Even when, in those days, there was a lot less digital interaction, and verbal communication was obviously the dominant form of people having conversations, etc. All right. Kay has asked if I can just provide the postgraduate WhatsApp group. What I'm going to do, Kay, is I'm going to provide you with the link to the Facebook group, and I think hop into the Facebook group or leave a reply on this YouTube channel, and I'll get in touch with you and provide you with those details. So we'd love to have you on the group. And if you are at WITS or associated with WITS, you're more than welcome to actually join us in the WITS postgrad WhatsApp group. And we certainly have a lot of fun in there. And we obviously go through a lot of things that are relevant to WITS specifically. So I put the link to the Facebook group there. And Kay, if you can just hop onto the Facebook group and then direct message me in the Facebook group. And then everybody on the webinar today, guys, please hop into the Facebook group. That's the space where you'll get, support and interact with each other in the Student Success Coach Facebook group. You'll get the updates about the events, and we can interact. And as I always commit to everybody, I'm happy to have a 30-minute coaching call with you. And the Facebook group is the best place to get in touch with me. And I do that all the time. People just pop me a message and I reply back, and we exchange phone numbers and we hop on a call. And if that's useful for you, then please do take up the opportunity. Okay. One thing you should know from me by now is the importance of taking action. I believe in transformation over information, and we discussed that this week in the webinar when we were looking at how to sift through the material and books and courses, etc., that you've got available to yourself. And if you take action and you are intentional about changing your circumstances, if you're intentional about applying what you've learned, that's when you then get the goals that you can achieve and the transformation and the progress that you want to as an individual. So we've been through a couple of areas of communication. There is a full section for each of those in the course, and I'm going to offer you the course just now. Even if you don't go and take the course, please take what you've learned today, pick one of those areas of communication, and then be intentional about making some changes in the coming week. Put what you've learned into practice to achieve your goals. Now, we may not be interacting or communicating in all of those different areas. I'd be surprised if you aren't communicating in any of them, because I think that we have to in these days be able to communicate in at least a couple of them. But pick one that's most relevant for you. Pick one that perhaps you feel you're not getting a message across, or pick a one that you haven't been used to. Maybe that's an area where you are now going to be able to communicate a lot more effectively, and then make some changes in the coming week. Take some action, and then please pop a note on the comments just now as to which one which one you would like to take some action in. Calvin, could you suggest some phrases we can use when asking for further clarification? So common things, just to recap, let me just summarize what you said. And then if you play corporate bingo, you'll hear these phrases. So let me play it back to you. That's a common one. Let me play it back to you. So that's almost like you're reflecting back what the person said. Let me play it back to you. That's, I often say that. And I use that with my boss a lot. So if my boss, we have a conversation, I say, just let me play that back to you so I just get my understanding. So those are a couple of phrases that potentially you could use. And be authentic. Just say, I want to make sure that I've heard correctly. These are the key points. And then again, use your notebook and make some notes while a person is talking so that you can then refer to your notes, whether you're making a contribution in the chat or you're making it verbally back to the person or into the meeting. If you're prepared and organized, you'll be able to give that contribution back to them a lot more meaningfully. So the Facebook group is there. Please jump in and join us in the Facebook group. All right, so in the course, you will get, as I said, a lot of detail in each of these different sections. And there's, as you can see, there are 3 lectures for each of those areas of communication. So exactly like we've gone through today, emails, online meetings, groups, social media, mass, verbal, etc. And you'll get worksheets, you'll get one-on-one lessons, you'll get whiteboard lessons, you'll get activities, and then you'll get an assignment at the end. And that really is then, over a couple hours, 2.5 hours, a comprehensive overview of all my tips and techniques and principles with regards to communicating all of those different areas. And I'd really love it if you want to be a student of mine. If you're not yet already, please do jump into the course, take advantage of that. And, I'll see you there, and we can always interact further inside the course, and you can ask questions and you can interact with other students in the course to just become a better and better communicator. So I'm putting the link there in the chat right now. And I think it's the last day that it's on discount today. So it was on from Monday till today. And then it's back up to full price. So please do jump in there, grab that course, and take advantage of all the tips and tricks and lessons that I teach you there, as well as the worksheets, and a lot of which I will have touched on today, and hopefully you've got a lot of value from, and that you can take action from, even if you don't go and take the course. But if you become a more impactful communicator and achieve your goals, then imagine the results that you can see in your life, both as a student and as a professional in the workplace. So please do jump in there, and I'll see you in the course. What I can make available for free today is actually my ebook called Get Heard: Communication Skills to Double Your Impact. So if you are an Amazon Kindle reader, you can go pick that up for free on the Amazon Kindle store. It's always for free if you are a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, but it's available on the Kindle store today for free. So go and pop in there. And please, guys, courses and books of mine, or videos or content or podcasts and anything else of mine that you consume, please do take the time to leave a rating and a review. I need that social proof to make this more sustainable and to reach a wider audience. So on the books and the courses and the videos, please just give us a like and hopefully a comment and a rating and a review. That's critically important for me as well. All right, then just the next couple of sessions coming up. We've got one on the 26th of March. That's next Friday. And then I think the following week is a long weekend, so we're not going to have a session then. But next week is on academic editing with Louise. She's a freelance editor, and she offers academic editing and proofreading services. So I'll be interviewing her next Friday right here at 12 o'clock on the channel. If you subscribe, you'll obviously get those updates. And I'm going to put the link to this session now. And what's a really great feature on these webinars, if you hop onto that link and it says there, set reminder, just set a reminder. And then, as we said earlier, if you want to go to an event, it's going to send you that reminder, and you'll be, more assured of coming into the session and achieving your goals by getting those skills from that session. Then possibly hearing what Louise has to offer and following up with her afterwards in case, you want to use her services. Maybe you've got a thesis to hand in. Maybe you've got a writing project that you're working on that you need some help with. And certainly, I know when I did my PhD, I used an editor just to have a fresh pair of eyes, go through it, fix my grammar, and proofreading and editing in an academic context is very different to other contexts like fiction and journalism, etc. So you need somebody that's actually experienced in proofreading and editing academic writing. And I teach and coach on academic writing extensively. We had Gabby Noodleman a couple of weeks ago. She teaches full-time on academic writing at University of Cape Town, and editing and proofreading that academic writing is a very specific skill that you need somebody to help you with. So I would really advise you to come into the session next week and learn all about it, and then possibly take advantage of Louise's services at another time once you've heard her talk a little bit about it. And then I've had so many requests for a session on student mental health, and we've now set this up. And as I say, that will be then, I think, 3 weeks from today because of the holidays. So I put the link in there for you to go in and again, just set a reminder and come into the Facebook group as well, because all these events are scheduled in the Facebook group so that you can, get them and, we can comment on them. And then what I do, I will literally do after this, after I jump off here, my action, I will also take some action, is I go put all my slides and the recording into the Facebook group, and I welcome our new members on there so that you've just got that for reference. And again, that's all in the Facebook group. The Facebook group really, there's no cost to join. I moderate it. We give valuable insights and updates. We sometimes run a bit of a weekly win competition, so people are struggling with procrastination, etc. We challenge people to get things done. We encourage people to complete writing projects and study for exams, etc. So you've got nothing to lose. I mean, if you're on Facebook already and you want to interact, local is lacquer. We've got kind of a number of international students on there as well. And it's open, so you're also welcome to post in there and ask for help. We actually launched a mentorship program in there a couple of weeks ago, where we have a couple of mentors, a couple of people on the webinar today. For example, Cara is a mentor in the Facebook group. I think she's oversubscribed now, but so many people asking for mentors and help to get through their studies. The Facebook group has a mentorship program. You can sign up to be a mentor, and I really would ask, if you're willing to mentor other students, you can sign up to become a mentor. Louise and Cara, so Louise I'm interviewing next week, and Cara I interviewed a couple of weeks ago. They are mentors in the Facebook group. If you need a mentor to keep you honest, keep you focused, help you get through your studies, the Facebook group is a great place to go and get that, and then set up a mechanism, a weekly session, or maybe an email or an update that just keeps you focused and accountable to somebody. And student mental health issues are directly related to the sort of support that you will get from a mentor. So we'll be talking to Melissa Ardendorf, who is a student health expert. She's been trained in NLP, and she's been lecturing at University of Pretoria for 7 years. She's got a PhD, and she's been through that student journey as well. So join us on the 9th of April for Student Mental Health. That event is also all set up through the Facebook group, where I invite everybody, and you can mark yourself as going, and you'll get a reminder there as well. So that is it then from my side. I would like you guys to take some action at the very least. Pick an area of communications that you've learned today that you would like to improve, or hop into the course, go grab the book, do the activities and assignments in the course, or at least join us in the next couple of sessions where we learn in our lunchtime on a Friday at 12 o'clock. Next week, as I say, you'll learn about academic editing and proofreading. And then the 9th of April, you'll learn about mental health issues and get support and coping strategies for dealing with isolation and depression and loneliness and all of the other things that many of us face, not just because we're students, but which have also been made worse because of the pandemic and the lockdown over the last year or so. So this is a time when even more so we need to be conscious of mental health issues, learn how we can manage our own mental health, and then, as I say, get the support that you need in the Facebook group. I put the link into the chat, and I'll pop it in there again, because I think this is one of the most important areas that I think you can join us and get the support that you need. And I see, if Ifeoma, you're looking for the link to the book. So there it is. Ifeoma, just grab it on the chat and go and download it, and you'll get a similar amount of value from there. But I just have realized that people, they like to go through my courses, but then they like a readable version of that on their Kindle, so that they can go back and refresh without having to go into the course and watch the videos again. So really, you get the best of both worlds. You can go through the course, get the insights, also get the webinars, get some value, take some action, make some progress, learn something at lunchtime, and then grab the book and get the reference material. And of course, on a number of occasions, we bring experts in so that you can learn from them, and it's not just my voice going on all the time every week. And with that, I will see you in the Facebook group and on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe, take advantage of everything I make available to you. It's my commitment to your success. Now go take action and become a better communicator. Thanks all. Cheers.